Hi, I'm Jennifer Levin. I am the Director of Public Policy from the ARC of Colorado. And the ARC of Colorado is the state chapter for a group of organizations that serve Coloradans with disabilities. And we serve Coloradans in several different capacities. And I want to explain a little bit about what the state chapter does and then the local chapters do for individuals. The ARC of Colorado, which, as I mentioned earlier, is the state chapter for the ARC network here in Colorado. And the state chapter essentially does public policy work, systemic work, trainings, and support through fundraising and grants for the local chapters. Some examples of some of the systemic work that the state chapter does, the ARC of Colorado does, would be around issues impacting individuals with developmental disabilities, such as options when it comes to supports as an adult, including supported decision making, less restrictive alternatives to things like guardianships or conservatorships. We like to do trainings on what those less restrictive options look like. For example, we were able to raise money for a grant that was given to the ARC of Weld County to help put on a training that included videos, social media messaging, a panel of experts that got the message out about supported decision making. And because of some systemic work we were doing in supported decision making, we also thought it would be a good idea to work on public policy that would create legislative language around what supported decision making is and what a supported decision making agreement looks like. And that would be an example of some of the public policy work that we've done that would have a systemic impact on a person with a developmental disability. We also do systemic work around children and education rights of children with disabilities in schools. And then anything impacting people with disabilities receiving governmental services that are on waivers, such as the supported living services waiver, the developmental disabilities waiver, any kind of Medicaid supports and government services that people should be receiving, and what are the systemic issues around receiving those supports. We like to address that, particularly in collaboration with other state organizations and local organizations. So it's better to work with other entities that serve people with disabilities to try to make those changes happen. There are 14 local chapters of the ARC. And if you look at this map, we have it color coded for each chapter and according to where you live. So depending on what county you're in, will determine which chapter can serve you. So for instance, if you live in Adams County, you will be served by the ARC of Adams County. And it can get a little complicated in some of these counties because some of them do overlap with each other and serve more than one county. So you just want to give them a call and let them know where you live, if you need assistance from an ARC, and they can tell you if they serve you or not. And if not, they can refer you to the correct county. And if you look at all the gray area on this map, you'll notice that's the areas that aren't served by a brick and mortar local ARC chapter. And basically what that means is there just isn't an office in those areas and it's not served by a local chapter. So what we do at the ARC of Colorado is we will contract with an advocate who can serve anybody who lives in those areas. And those are essentially very remote, rural areas in Colorado. But definitely there are people in those areas, and there are people with developmental disabilities that need assistance with the issues that the local chapters do serve. So we want people to understand that just because they're in that gray area doesn't mean you do not get any assistance from an ARC. Just call the ARC of Colorado and we will definitely set you up with an advocate. I want to talk a little bit about the services the local chapters provide for individuals with disabilities. Essentially, the local chapters serve individuals from birth throughout their entire life. So if you are a parent of a child with a disability, or if you are an adult or a self-advocate and you need services that are based on adult needs, call your local ARC chapter. So the chapters look into, with regard to child advocacy, specifically, some of the services and assistance they provide will revolve around their educational rights, going to meetings for determining the individualized educational program for your child. They will also help navigate the very complicated Medicaid waiver system that children are oftentimes eligible for. These waivers include the Home and Community-Based Services Waiver, the HCBS waiver. They include the Children's Extensive Support Waivers, the CES waiver. So if you suspect your child might be eligible for these waivers, please contact your local ARC chapter, because that advocate can help you and guide you through the pretty complicated process of applying for those waivers. In addition to child advocacy, the advocates are also very qualified in assisting and advocating for adults. And adults are also most likely going to be eligible for waivers that would help support them in their community and in getting integrated employment. Some of these waivers include the Supported Living Services waiver, the Developmental Disabilities waiver. They also can include advocacy through the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, which is an agency that serves individuals with disabilities in attaining integrated and competitive employment. So if you have not yet and you're an adult, or you are a student in transition in high school, which can be anywhere from the age 15 or 9th grade and up through the end of your high school career, you should be getting transition services. And part of that should include the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. And you should have a counselor navigating employment goals for you at that time. Your local ARC chapter can be with you at those meetings, introducing you to those agencies and what's out there for you. And that goes, like I said, not only as a child from birth, it goes through adulthood. So as an adult receiving adult services, the advocates will be there by your side to help you figure out and navigate all of those systems. And there are quite a few. And it's always good to have someone around that knows what exists out there for you. So again, I strongly encourage anybody who either advocates for someone with a developmental disability or is someone with a developmental disability to contact that chapter. If you suspect that your client or your client's child has a disability and could use accommodations or supports or take advantage of some of these governmental services, please feel free to contact your local ARC. It's free. It's a free service. They will walk you and your client through the process and determine whether or not you are eligible, first of all, for their services. And then if not, they can refer your client to other agencies out there that can help them. If you suspect that your client's child has a disability, I would strongly encourage you to get in touch with one of your local chapters to get an advocate. It's really important to have someone initiate what's called the child find process. identifying the student as being eligible for disability supports, specifically the IEP, the Individualized Educational Program. If you do suspect the child may need those kinds of evaluations and be determined eligible, contact the local ARC and they can explain the law. They can explain how that applies to children in special education, and they can come to the meetings with the parents. Any meeting that has to do with the education of that child, the ARC advocate should be allowed to go with the parent. And if they are not, that would be a problem. And we would like to hear, the state chapter would like to know about that, because again, we like to deal with those systemic issues. And if there is something systemically that looks like it's a systemic problem in a county or a school district, that's something we would want to address. Contacting one of your local ARCs is not complicated. The attorney, can do it, a social worker, anyone who may want to speak on behalf of the client, a family member can easily contact the ARC. And of course, at some point, they will most likely want to be in contact with your client. Some of the chapters require an intake form before they can schedule a meeting. So that may be something you could assist your client with, filling out that form and then getting something on the books for a phone call or meeting with an advocate. And at that point, they can determine what kind of services they can provide for you. Our services are available to anyone, including people involved in the child welfare system. There is no turning people away based on that. And it is, as I said before, a free service. If you have questions or if you have referrals, please feel free to reach out to me, Jennifer Levin at the ARC of Colorado. My email is jlevin@thearcofcode.org, or Allison Butler at ORPC.